check out my. All right, there we go. I think we're live. Do we have video? Anything? There it is. I'm sorry that I always start every video with "Are we live? Are we on? Can you hear me?" It's like every Zoom call right at work, right? Can you hear me? Am I muted? you know, you're like talking at the camera. You say, yeah, see? Yeah, every time. But here we are. Everybody, hello. Welcome to Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel. Hey, I'm back, right? It's been a while, a couple months, in fact. I mean, I know I've been doing the show, but I haven't been in very good shape. I know last Sunday was just kind of this quick and dirty, hey guys, it's an update on me. I was pretty sick. But I'm on the mend. I'm getting a lot better. All of the issues that plagued me for the last 2 months are basically behind me, and now we're getting back into the saddle. And yesterday I got back into the saddle by running a scenario, and it was an absolute disaster. And so I actually blame scenario design. There is a certain amount of blame that can, of course, be assigned to the players because they have agency, and sometimes they do things that you just absolutely can't anticipate as an umpire. But having better, more ironclad scenario design actually helps to limit some of that, corral some of that, and makes it much less likely that the scenario is just going to go completely off the rails. So that comes down to the briefing. That comes down to where you position units on the map and a few other factors. But I really think the briefing and the positioning of the units really, really matters. And I probably have to stop using K22 as a system when units are far apart. We were able to advance things in chunks of time, but it just didn't work out because we had to slow down for cavalry engagements. And the infantry was pretty far apart. Let's take a look at who we have here with us so we can say hello. We have Jan. Hello, Jan. How you doing?
Hello, I'm doing better, thank you.
Good, good. Jan's been a little ill as well. I tell you, it's just that time of year. It's going around. Jan assisted yesterday. He came. He answered the call to help umpire. It was a real lifesaver. Probably saved us a lot of time on the front end because he was able to go in there, assign some channels, and help out. So it was really good to have an experienced umpire like Jan in there to help us out. I also want to say hi to Polar Bear, Dictator Polar Bear, as his name says. Hello, Polar Bear. Can you hear us?
Hello.
How you doing?
Uh, I'm doing pretty good. I'm happy to be here and kind of learning from my mistakes, I guess. This was my first game and happy to get started with this.
Great. Yeah, the pressure was really on because we had a lot of first-time players, and of course I blew it, which is pretty predictable. Um, but but what do you do, So we're going to talk about it. The answer to the question, "What do you do?" is you learn from it, so that you don't keep repeating the same mistake over and over. So that's kind of what we're going to get into. I'll give everybody a quick overview of the scenario, and then we'll talk about kind of how it broke down and lessons learned and other things. So I do know that this is one of those maps where we have a hard time drawing on it. So we'll see how we do here. Let's see, do I have the pin selected? No, there we are. And then let's see if I can draw on the map. So we have a siege here around Seedorf, and of course I can't draw in this middle section right here, but right here is there's a blue force that is in the middle of Seedorf, and I'm just going to grab some blue blocks and I'm just going to drop them in there to represent the force that's under siege. So blue is hanging out there in Seedorf, and then we got some red forces kind of hanging out around, laying siege to them. Okay, so this is just to illustrate. And with the forces that I put on the map were intended simply for that purpose. At no point did I intend for red to challenge the siege itself. The red's orders were simply to reinforce the siege. Basically, go in and surround red. So blue has a force that's over here. Let me at least change the color to blue so we don't confuse people. Blue has a force that is centered here in Hazenel, and their mission is to go up here and surround the besiegers, kind of like Julius Caesar, right? You know, red being Caesar, and then you had the barbarian tribes. Probably not the correct term to characterize them, but you had Caesar's opposition who surrounded him. So you have a siege in the middle, and then you have a second siege, and that was really all blue was supposed to do. The logic behind that is blue has a relief column that will be coming up in 1 week's time, and they want to bag the red force while saving their own blue force. However, blue decides what we're going to do is we're going to go up and we're going to smash the siege ourselves. Now that was okay because they were supposed to kind of come up with this plan their route of march, get into position, and so on. But there was a catch, and that catch is over here on turn two. At the start of turn two, they're supposed to receive word that there is a massive red relief column coming up this way. And the red column is going to help the besiegers destroy the blue forces that are there, and that red column is coming up right now. So the logic of the scenario was blue is supposed to say, oh my gosh, we have to stop these guys, and then what you have to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to block them at one or more of these bridges and use our superior cavalry force, which they had a massively superior cavalry force, to come around and destroy their siege guns, which is at the end of their train. And of course, that didn't happen at all. Blue continued to persist in their plan. They did send some cavalry over here to the town of Krippingen, which opposed the Reds' chosen crossing. Ironically, Red kind of walked right into that. They did send a probing force up this way, and that was unopposed. There were forces down here in the south, but Red basically pushed their way across using their cuirassiers, which they were supposed to do, and got in. Excuse me. Now having got across, the expectation is Red is going to come over here. They're going to set up their siege guns over here somewhere, and Red wins the scenario. Unless Blue decides, hey, we're going to slow them down and stop them. But Blue is badly outnumbered. Blue is outnumbered by about 2 to 1. Their only real advantage is their cavalry force. And so the expectation is Blue can hold them at the crossings if they react quickly, but they didn't do that. Why didn't they do that? I think a big part of the problem was, and I'm about to stop talking here momentarily, guys, but a big part of the problem was, first of all, I placed them over here in Hasenel. I should have placed them closer over here in Grossmau, perhaps, or even further over here like Karsdorf, which would have forced them to contend with this force here. Right here would have been a good position. Anything about a mile or two closer to the river crossings probably would have changed the dynamic of the scenario. And the second thing is, I absolutely positively should have told Blue there were no circumstances, there's no scenario where you're going to break that siege. You don't have the force to do it. The units I had placed there, however, when I gave them a screenshot of the position, they were really there to abstract the force. They weren't there to represent this massive force because I didn't want to fill the map with a bunch of blocks. But at the same time, I didn't make clear to Blue that the forces that are involved are much larger than you, and you're just there to kind of help out and create a pain for Red. You're not going in there to break the siege. And of course, Seedorf was what we call in the trade a MacGuffin, at least in the Hollywood trade. A MacGuffin is just a plot device. Well, all right. A MacGuffin is a plot device that you use to advance things along. But there you have it. All right, so Jan, uh,
Yes.
you were the umpire there. You saw this kind of unfold in real time. What was your take on all of this?
Well, put aside the scenario design, I think, first of all, we again saw sort of, you mentioned that the issue with the K22 system, that you sort of have the issue with the impulses of 5 minute or 5 minute turns, which we try to sort of put into bunches of 10 or 15 minutes
Mm-hmm.
to get going. You have the issue that there is always going to happen something in between, so you have to stop and you have to adjust and ask for new orders and stuff, as well as sort of on the player side that they are used to these intervals, be it 5 minutes or be it 15 minutes, they sort of begin thinking in these increments, right? They think, okay, what am I going to do in the next 5 minutes? They are not thinking about what is my general plan, what's the objective, how am I going to reach that. So that's something the players need to think about, no matter what the actual turn frequency is. And then Blue had a big issue. I think both teams had some substantial issues getting started, so to say. For the most time, Blue just sat there at the Tiefensee and sort of wanted to assemble their forces, which in the beginning they were all assembled in Hohenzollern, right? So if they wanted to go to relieve Seedorf, they just should have pushed on with all the forces and crushed in there, which, as you said, wasn't an option actually. So they wasted a lot of time and they wasted their cavalry potential. They had two sort of divisions of cavalry, actually, a light division with a brigade of hussars and lancers, and a heavy
Mm-hmm.
with dragoons and cuirassiers. And instead of throwing these to the west and scouting this wide area there to the west and delaying the enemy, and then having the heavy cavalry as a quick reaction force or reserve, so to say, um, they kept the cavalry mostly at Tiefensee, and then sent the heavy cavalry to surround Seedorf eventually, and had only the one Lancer brigade in the west, and they did their job. They stopped basically an enemy cuirassier brigade that was crossing the river there, but they weren't able to provide any substantial scouting information on the enemy movement. And Red, on the other side, had basically the same issue. They needed a lot of time to get moving. They had some scouting going on with their light cavalry in the south, um,
Down here in
but
Karsdorf.
those were
Yeah.
really sort of limited. They didn't push on to the east to get hold of the enemy.
Right. Yeah, the Red Scouting Force came down here to Karsdorf, and they had some spotting reports, and then they stopped. They did a good job, I think, setting up an observation post right here on what we ended up calling Hill 133. I think it's actually 137, but either way, um, but then they just stopped. They did eventually come north to support the Red Column's advance on Krippingen, which would have probably been fairly successful. Um, but yeah, rather than push to the east to locate and find the enemy, they just kind of stopped there. But again, that comes down to their orders and their objectives and what they're doing. I do think one of the big strange things that happened was in Tiffenzel, where Blue just kind of stopped, and I guess one of the players wanted to do something in the town, and it was kind of more roleplay oriented. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the commander in chief had to go back and say, "Hey, what are you doing? Get moving," which is the correct response to that sort of shenanigan. Um,
Yeah.
let's see here. We have the commander in chief, Special Zindos, who is
Yes,
here,
I'm right.
and
Yeah.
let's see. I wanna keep this kind of directed or guided, so I'll ask you a question. What was your what was your plan? What was your plan? Go ahead with your
Yeah.
go ahead.
Essentially, what we wanted to do, this was proposed by Potato, but at first I believe that directly crushing through one part of the siege was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then Potato suggested that we stick to what you said, which was to surround the besiegers. And so he proposed that we go around via Sildau, which is via Sildau to outflank their line and seize the Manshot Hill, which is actually very important for two reasons. Well, one of them was it was critical to station artillery there, and
Mm-hmm.
the other was it was honestly a good position to defend should an attack from the besiegers came on us on that position should we have been weakened by their redeployment of our heavy cavalry. Now, I want to justify one thing here. The use of the hussars was a crucial mistake. Now, why is that? Uh, why did I take them? I specifically wanted them because I expected that the red team would have already occupied Monshot Hill. So I wanted to find out what was going on there. But mid game, I just decided that I wasn't gonna reassign them. I don't know why. I myself don't know why, but I mean, I guess it was just a crucial mistake on my part, as well as the gathering at Tiefensee. Like Jan said, I should have just kept moving forward. I guess we all learn from them.
Well, I'm learning too. I learned a lot from this, which is what we're talking about in this whole podcast, is the lessons that we learn from these scenarios. And uh, on at the start of turn two, I personally came and gave you a report. There's this huge red column, and what I expected you would do is say, okay, let's turn around, let's reinforce the crossings, and let's see what we can do about this column. Let's stop them from getting to Seedorf. But you stuck to your original mission. Now, your original mission, in all fairness to you, was a sound plan. I did not tell you that there was no possibility that you could take Seedorf. So you made what I think was a logical, rational, and generally pretty good plan. One of your subordinates, I think, threw kind of a monkey wrench into it that made things that it slowed you down a lot. But my question is, why didn't you change mission when you received word that a large force was coming to your west?
Personally, I did not think that it was as close as it was, and I believe that I had time to break the siege of Seedorf. I wasn't aware that they were that moving that fast. Um, personally, I believe that their siege artillery was slowing them down,
Mm-hmm.
and so on and so forth. So
Yeah, all right.
it
And
was
I don't think that's crazy or unreasonable. You know, I absolutely see your logic. It's a justifiable decision. So, yeah, all right. Polar Bear, you were there yesterday. What did you command yesterday?
I commanded the 1st and 2nd Brigade.
Of which force? Was it red or blue?
Red Force. I'm here to represent the Reds, I guess.
Nice, nice. Well, yeah, you guys started in motion on the road actually, and then you stopped. What happened there? I noticed that you guys stopped somewhere around Ninewell, or maybe a little north of it, near those hills, or maybe further up. I can't remember, but you guys stopped at what point? At what point? What was going on there? Do you know?
Well, I don't know if I heard the full story, but at the beginning of the game, we kind of made an agreement with everybody, at least for the cavalry scouts, that we would be getting a report every 30 minutes. And when that report didn't come back, we got kind of confused. We were also kind of confused on what direction we should take because we were not getting any information from on the eastern side of the river.
Mm-hmm.
We were also afraid that it's possible that the enemy was actually at Alt Goldberg and they may have been waiting there. And
Yeah.
so when we were over here on this hill and the column came to a full stop, we were kind of thinking, okay, maybe we need to think about this for a minute before we proceed because there might be a trap waiting for us somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And we eventually decided to kind of split our forces. A majority of them started going towards Cambergen. I think that's how you say it.
Timbergren, yeah. Yeah.
I went ahead and my commander Michael wanted me to keep heading up the road to Goldberg to check to see if it's safe. And if it wasn't, then I was going to hold this position on this hill and try to protect their flank
Mm.
so they can try to get guns on maybe one of these hills if there is a opposition on the side of the river.
Yeah, and this gets back to me having to take responsibility, because you guys, your cavalry did come down here to Karsdorf, and they did a good job scouting that area. Now they didn't go beyond that, which I would have liked to have seen, but they came down, they scouted Karsdorf, and the player there did send. His name was Grunt. Grunt did send couriers back with reports on a regular basis. At one point, he even rode back himself, caught up to you guys here, and then had a kind of a conference with the commander in chief, and then rode back, and then finally came north up to Kippengrin. Um, I can't really fault you guys. One of the problems that could have caused confusion is if you were expecting reports every 15 minutes, but we're moving in 10 minutes. Okay, this turn's just going to be 5 minutes. This turn's going to be a 15-minute jump. That can make it really hard on the umpires to get you those routine reports and make sure everything is timed correctly. Because if we move 5 minutes and now we're going to move 15, well, in what turn do you deliver the report and all that? It creates confusion. Um, and that was my fault. But I do want to say that the red plan was relatively simple and effective. That's all they had to do was move. I like the fact that you considered, well, maybe there's a trap, let's scout this area, although they should have sent cavalry to do that. But okay, I think red did pretty well, and I understand why blue did what they did. Unfortunately, the scenario went off the rail because blue went right and red was just kind of lumbering along, and there was no possibility of contact between the two sides for the next hour, hour and a half of gameplay time. And we were like, we might as well just call it because blue just completely stuck to one plan. And again, the responsibility for that is with me in the scenario design because I set up a scenario design where that wasn't just possible, it was probably likely. I should have thought about that. I didn't think about it. And, well, I think the side commanders and the players did more or less reasonably what we should expect of them. Given the parameters I gave them, I should have spent more time on the briefing. So, that's my lesson there. Go ahead.
Personally, if you had placed us around more closer to the river, I might have decided on another plan that would have placed us in contact. Now, this plan would not have been very advantageous to me. I wouldn't have decided on defending the crossing specifically.
Why not?
Now, I probably would have ordered more so general advance from the river to go via the Der Sea and then eventually reach Seedorf from that direction. Now that is a longer direction, but
yeah,
you can assure that even if I went back to Hohenzollern by that time, I would have crossed their column. That would have definitely forced me to change my plans by then.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think I don't blame this on anyone except the scenario design because I think we were very far away from each other.
Yeah.
But if the enemy had arrived, say, more so around just a few miles away from Hohenzollern, I'm pretty sure contact would be definitely possible and more so. More likely. So, yeah, it's sad because but Marching Simulator was pretty fun.
Well,
I like that version too.
And it actually can be fun. Marching Simulator, as much as
Yeah,
we cry
honestly,
about
it was much more realistic than what.
Yeah.
Remember, it was like 6 a.m., so I doubt anyone was willing to get ready for engagement at that time.
Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, I really do think it comes down to scenario design. The dilemma I was wanting to create for you in particular was you're going to have this elaborate plan. Maybe it's not so elaborate, but you're going to have this plan to do something, and then you were supposed to receive information that took all of those plans, threw them in the trash, and forces you to adapt, issue change of mission orders on the fly. So that was really the test, and that actually puts you in the toughest command slot on the entire map. There's no player in the entire game who had a challenge as great as you had. And of course, you answered it. You cut right through the Gordian knot by saying, well, we're just going to stick with the old plan. And of course, that's where it goes off the rails. But that's because I wasn't clear to you that your original plan was not viable. At no point did I express to you that, hey, you cannot break that siege no matter how hard you try. I did put up little like breastwork markers or whatever. I was like, I don't know, but whatever.
Yeah, I just saw it. When we were approaching the Monshot hill in that last shot that you sent us, I was like, why are there trenches dug by the red team. I
Hmm.
wasn't sure why they were there, but I was pretty sure that my heavy cavalry could have broken it eventually. But to be honest, I did adapt, and I was sure that my plan could succeed because, well, had you made it clear that the defenders were much stronger than I thought, I probably would have stuck to something else if I
Hmm.
knew.
Hmm.
Well, as soon as I knew that the Grossagan column was coming, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Well.
but yeah, I mean, the main reason why my plan didn't get on the way was because mid halfway, as you said at the start of the convo, that someone just started blocking me, and I was going to have a Napoleon like rage at that person. Uh, I have nothing against them, but I needed to get things moving as fast as I could, and this person who had actually one of the strongest infantry brigade, the guard brigade, held up everyone outside of the village for like I think 3 actual KS-22 turns. So it was honestly the worst part of the game. I don't know why he did that, but I mean I'm pretty sure he could have done that when he was positioned outside of the city.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But
perfect friction moment there.
Yeah.
So
that was honestly the most realistic part of that game.
yeah,
Yeah.
probably. Yeah, and when it comes to scenario design, I think there are two issues we have spoken about now or touched upon. That is first the sort of the setup. So how far do you put the opposing forces from each other, and then sort of the or maybe it's 3 points actually. Setup. Then what do you tell the players about the current situation, and then what do you tell them is their actual objective, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, we see sometimes that players get like fixated on one objective and one reading, one understanding of what the objective means. When we think back to my Jersey game, the French invasion force just landed on the island and stuck to this one harbor there, because well the briefing told them they need to control the harbor. But so and for me it was clear because in the general sort of briefing it said they wanted to control the island, they wanted to get the harbor to bring more troops, and in my understanding that meant okay, then you also need to ensure that you actually can use that port, and that it will only be happening when you sort of get rid of all the castles and fortresses protecting the beach in which that port is. But the players got fixated on this. We need to hold this port, and that's everything we do in this game. And so that's sort of the parallel we see here. Blue got fixated on okay, we want to break that siege, and no matter what's going on our flanks, we just do it. So there are maybe 3 points you need to think about carefully when you set up a scenario. And I think you can put the forces far away from each other. That's not the problem as such.
Hmm.
But with the 5 minute turn increments, it becomes a little bit problematic. I think with 15-minute increments might work better, or
Hmm.
you need to get sort of a general plan from the players which you then can to allow them, so you put them far away from each other to allow them to come up with a maneuver plan. Which routes do we want to take, how do we want to approach the objective, and then you say okay, we take this plan, and then I don't know, we start 1 hour into the game and you just place the forces close to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think one of the other things that might be advisable too is take scenarios like your Jersey scenario, and after we've had a playthrough, uh, keep it. Don't put it on a shelf, but keep it, adjust the briefing and so on, and then
Yes.
run it with new players. And after 2 or 3 times after we run a scenario and we have kind of the briefing dialed in and the players are pretty clear and they tend to do what we as umpires expect and the problems kind of develop and it's a good solid scenario, then we use that as a template. You can always
Mhm.
change the map. You can
Ah,
change the forces a little bit. You can change the names. and so it feels new to players, but you're playing a standard scenario that has been thoroughly tested. And one of the problems is people like myself were experimenting. This was absolutely an experiment. I wanted to throw somebody into a situation where all of a sudden your plans are in chaos. What do you do now? And of course, the experiment was a spectacular failure. But that's okay, because you learn from the experience and then you move on
Exactly.
from there. So there you
Yes.
go. We're here to learn, and that's a big part of the IKS mission, even though it's not mentioned anywhere on our website, but we are here to learn. Everybody, I want to
So to
thank
be,
you for being here. This is the end of the podcast, but I want to thank everyone. I want to thank special Zindos for being here, Dictator Polar Bear, Jan, everybody in the audience. I do want to acknowledge people on the YouTube. I want to say hello to Achilles. It's great to see you here. Marvelous Anarchy. You like that moment during the podcast, didn't you? Um,
yeah,
and
that was me actually.
that's all right. That's all right. It happens. So there you go. But yeah, and Achilles, I see that.
one
He
thing,
says, "Go ahead, go ahead."
one thing I like. I sorry by the way. One thing I'd like to say is that I honestly never have. This was my third game, and I'd honestly like to say that I definitely want to see more Napoleonic scenarios run by you because they might as well be very interesting. Because so far from the games that I've heard you've run, you're very tricky when it comes to the scenario design. So honestly, I'd be very interested to see what kind of other ideas you come up with for Napoleonic scenarios. I definitely participate in those.
Fantastic. Well, I'm excited. I'll be excited to run more. It'll probably be several weeks,
Yeah,
but
but
I'm going to
by the
be
way,
doing
one
one.
thing
Uh,
is that when you said that my plans would be in this area, that was like the complete opposite. I don't know why, but I just said, okay, that's fine. Well, I think I'll be fast enough to do it, but then and then suddenly your entire idea experiment was thrown into tatters when you heard me just say, okay,
Yeah,
that's
but
fine.
that's not your fault. That's not your fault.
No,
Speaking to that, Achilles says this, and this will be the last comment here. Marshall should have had a messenger from inside the besieged town who snuck out to tell him that the enemy force was too strong for him to break through.
that
Yeah,
that would have been pretty good.
yeah, that would have worked too. But anyway, in any case, lessons learned, and we're going to have some really cool future scenarios that will be exciting. I know we've been doing Open Saturday every Saturday for a year. I don't think we've missed a single one. So again, if you're new or you're interested in Kriegsspiel or the IKS, again, please join us. You can go to our website, www.kriegspiel.org, and everything you need is right there, including materials to create your own games and your own scenarios. Thank you all for being here, and we will see you on the next adventure.
Thank you.
Bye
Bye bye.
bye.